remember us this way. The Arizona sky hanging in your eyes. You look at me and babe, I wanna catch on fire. It's buried in my soul, the California gold. You found the light in me that I couldn't find. And I'm both choked up and I can't find the words. Every time we say goodbye, baby, it hurts. And the sun goes down and the band won't play. I always remember us this way. I love us in the night, poets trying to write. We don't know how to rhyme, but then we try. And all I really know, you're where I wanna go. The part of me that you will never die. When I'm all choked up and I can find the words. Every time we say goodbye, baby, it hurts. And the sun goes down and the band won't play. I always remember us this way. Oh yeah. And I don't wanna be just a memory, baby. Ooh, 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 ooh. When I'm all choked up and I can't find the words. Every time we say goodbye, baby, it hurts. When the sun goes down and the band won't play, I always remember us this way. When you look at me and the whole world fades, I always remember us this way.
So a Harvard astrophysicist, Avi Loeb, from, you guessed it, has declared that we potentially have an alien spacecraft arriving from outside of our solar system by the end of the year. This is the third such time that this has happened, the first being Oumuamua in 2017, followed by 2I Borisov in 2019. Their schedule of releasing this false space narrative every 2 years was put on hold while they dealt with the many other deceptions since then, but here we are again. Here are a few excerpts from his recent interviews.
You now say this is not only an alien spaceship, but it's nuclear powered? Why are you saying that?
Well, thanks for having me. First, I should say that if the light that we observe from this object is reflection of sunlight, its size needs to be bigger than Manhattan Island, 20 kilometers or so. And there isn't enough rocky material in interstellar space to deliver a rock of that size earlier than 10,000 years from now. So the question is, what is it? And its orbit, the trajectory that it takes, is aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun to within 5 degrees. That's a chance of 1 in 500. And moreover, the timing.
What does that tell you? What does that trajectory tell you?
Well, it indicates that perhaps it was designed by some intelligence.
They really know how to include all the details, so it appears that not only is this object real, but so is space exploration. But knowing that it's not, the wise thing would be to look into why they're trying to push this narrative right now. I've established in previous videos that it looks like we're probably nearing the end of the little season. So is this what they've been prepping us for since the 1950s?
There have been face-to-face meetings between United States officials and visitors from other star systems, period.
Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief.
The first reason I'm certain we're nearing the end of the little season is that the symphony of deception that we've witnessed over the last quarter millennium, growing more complicated and powerful with each passing year, is nearing its climax. It really is quite a body of work. And watching it evolve is depressing, but impressive. We have finally reached a point where everything 99.9% of the population believes is a lie. And it's not just that what we believe is false. It's that the lies are designed to hurt us morally, financially, physically, and most importantly, spiritually. The modern world is nothing more than a soul-harvesting factory for the devil. All deception has an agenda behind it. Otherwise, why would they waste their time? I've covered this in detail in previous videos, but the concepts we need to understand are going to be quite simple for those of you who understand basic politics. The institutions a tyrannical power needs to oversee in order to control a population are 1. Media and entertainment. This allows all information, formal and informal, to be readily absorbed by those who have no grasp on reality. 2. Education. Really an extension of the first category and another way to give false credibility to whatever narrative those in charge want to relay, just with less actors and more useful idiots. Studies have proven time and time again that the illusion of authority is all that 80% of the population needs to do their bidding. A lab coat, a business suit, a military uniform, whatever. 3. Government and law. I think this is self-explanatory. 4. Banking and finance. Just an extension of the previous category. The motivation to accomplish all you want in government. Number 5, medicine. Once a noble profession, now controlled by corporations who poison us from birth to ensure customers for life. Sick people are also easier to control. Literally every major institution in this world that controls information and power is entirely corrupt. In this case, they're primarily using media and entertainment with just a dash of education, and of course the remaining categories fund it. The Bible warns us over and over again about deception, to the point where it wouldn't be unreasonable to think our entire lives are just a test to see if we're able to avoid Satan's traps. I mean, the first lesson in the Bible, original sin. What did Eve do that was so terrible? She allowed herself to be deceived by Satan. The internet has proven to be quite interesting on this topic. On the one hand, we have more access to information than we possibly ever had. On the other, we know the only reason it exists is for those in power to gain more control of the majority as well as those who actually have thoughts in their heads. Some people go against the narrative and seek refuge in the jungle of information available at their fingertips. The powers that be attempt to control these people through the use of controlled opposition. They orchestrate these outcasts like Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, and the numerous other large conservatives and liberal social media accounts that were created to give the illusion that you're getting real deal info. And for most of those outliers, it works. But there is only a very, very small number of us who have actually used this tool to actually obtain truth. Since we make up just a small fraction of 1% of the population, I'm pretty sure they just consider us calculated losses, and overall they win. But so do we. The Bible, as well as early church fathers, speak on this period of time, this little season. And the one thing I can't get out of my mind is the prophecy that education will increase during this time. And it's true. The education is available, but only a select few of us will take a break from our debaucherous lifestyles to learn the truth. Another fairly obvious hint that we're nearing the end of the little season is that there is currently absolutely no regard for the future among world leaders. This was already covered in previous videos, so I'll just give a summary. Government, while always used as a tool of the rich and powerful to cater to their own selfishness and greed, at least used to pass laws to ensure future generations would do well enough that they could continue their grift. As all politicians know, if there's no bread, the peasants will revolt. And the standards have increased. Your typical slave today expects to work hard for his overlords, but in return, gets a poorly constructed house or two, a couple cars, yearly vacations, the ability to pay for their children's worthless college degree, and a nice retirement. Well, they no longer pass laws that ensure a financial future for subsequent generations. In fact, they're using every political and financial tool at their disposal to prop up the prices of all assets to enrich the wealthy at the expense of the 99% through unprecedented money printing and fiscal manipulation. Every single political leader is pumping the pockets of the rich to ensure that those of us 40 and younger can never obtain simple generational wealth. For the first time in the history of this country, future generations will not have even a fraction of what their parents did. A 40-hour work week at minimum wage of $1.60 in the early 70s is equal to $104,000 today. Just to give you an idea of the handicap younger people have to deal with. Not only is foresight gone, the economy is entirely fake now, at least at the corporate level. We already know government jobs are just welfare to reward those who pledge their soul to the narrative. But did you also know that 90% of corporate jobs are fake too? David Graeber of Yale wrote a book called BS Jobs, where he reveals that nearly every white-collar job is completely meaningless, and in some cases a liability. So how is so much money funneled into the pockets of idiots? Well, government and large corporations are the recipients of money printed out of thin air. In order to keep the narrative alive that the false world presented before us is legitimate, they require a population of highly paid individuals who are willing to live and die by the lies they've been taught and hold dear. Evil empires certainly don't reward the intelligent or moral. Besides jobs, you also have the stock market, which is completely fraudulent at the highest levels. The biggest company in the world, Nvidia, literally hired the accounting execs from Enron. And of course, you know the CEO has had his run-ins with the SEC since the 90s. But it doesn't matter because fraud is the catalyst that keeps this market going. What else? Credit card, mortgage, car payment, delinquencies are at all-time highs, and that's with 7 million mortgages still on moratorium and people using buy now, pay later for everything else, including groceries. It's bad out there, but none of that is evident in the news, who continues to spread the lie that the economy is doing great. So the 99% struggle to make ends meet, while the politicians continue their wealth transfer from the poor to rich with increasing fervor with each passing day. They only talk about the stock market, which is way overvalued because they just keep printing money to keep it propped up, while devastating the rest of us with crippling inflation. The path we are currently on is not sustainable, and every mathematically possible outcome is devastating. So why is it happening now? Well, the answer is twofold. First, they know it's the end. Whether they know it's just the end of our financial system or the world as we know it, we can't be sure, but the powers that be are partying it up like it's the end of days. They have absolutely no foresight and are looting the treasury, so to speak, as a signature to the end of an empire. The other reason, and the reason I believe they are still pumping this alien farce 75 years later, is that they need us to believe in an us versus them scenario with aliens. Except it isn't aliens. If this truly is the end of Satan's little season, and all evidence seems to point in that direction, then what will really be coming from the sky is Jesus and New Jerusalem. And they need us to go to war with him. And if prophecy is any indication, the vast majority will. Is this story they're pitching of a massive space station arriving in a month supposed to coincide with the return of Jesus? They have the technology to project any image they want on the sky. We can't possibly know if the end is already here. For all we know, it's just another stitch in the tapestry of lies they weave for the eventual battle. But we do know it's coming, and it isn't a compelling conclusion to our book of life. And everyone who is of this world, which is almost everyone, will be just another grain of sand in Satan's army. And let's certainly not forget that the president is currently building a standing army all across this country. Not to protect us, that's not what the military is trained for. They are trained to spot enemies and neutralize them. And Trump even said as much. He wants to populate every city and even small town with soldiers, even using volunteers if necessary, to prevent future uprisings. Yes, he said that, not to deal with crime, but to prevent uprisings that he knows are coming. The deception and moral abuses are obvious and real. And if this is in fact the end of the little season, then we have our work cut out for us. Augustine of Hippo, an early church father, spoke about this specific event. He was very empathetic for those who would be alive at this time, for he said, "We will endure severe trial and temptation, which will hit its zenith at the end. Further, we will face the fiercest prosecution in history." This is spot on if you look around the world today. Porn, divorce, societal breakdown, debauchery, self-centered behavior as the norm. And I haven't even gotten to inadvertent sin. Abominations most of us don't even know we commit simply because we happen to be living in a society where it's normalized, even considered innocent. I have a video in the works on inadvertent sin. It's quite an important topic in these times. But while it may be the most difficult time to be alive, we can't give up hope. For we know the end is up. Satan may have convinced most of the world and certainly all of its leaders, but we know how this all ends. On the workings of the world was to study history and current events. Keep up with the news. In truth, nothing will drive you farther from reality than mainstream narrative. In order to have any idea how the world works, we must first be knowledgeable in theology, because the people who run this world live and die by their faith. I don't mean just read the Bible. We need a deep understanding of their faith. We must read the Talmud, Zohar, Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Book of Law by Aleister Crowley, Morals and Dogma, the Freemasonic Bible by Albert Pike, and Demonology by King James, just for starters. Understand the symbology, too. It's very important. Everything will make sense because that's how they advertise their true intentions. They're disturbing books, but at least they teach why the world works the way it does. And if you're like me and have spent significant time studying the actions of political leaders, but just haven't been able to connect the dots, this puts everything together. We also need to understand law, especially the difference between legal and lawful. This will sound crazy if it's the first time you're hearing it, but we have been duped into representing ourselves as corporations instead of people. Have you ever wondered why we don't possess any of the rights guaranteed in the Bill of Rights? Well, this should clear it up. Our language has been so manipulated that we can't even correctly interpret the words of Jesus Christ unless we read the KJV. And only then if we understand the difference between plural, singular, subject, and object pronouns in Old English. Thee, thy, thou, ye, etc. This change also gives corporations, including the U.S. government, the right to legally own us by deceiving us into recognizing ourselves as corporations involved in commerce. Ever wonder why a certain class of people never goes to jail for insider trading, embezzlement, corruption, or fraud? Because they know how to manipulate the system. Let me back up a minute and explain. Modern English is known for having its revolution in 1800, which makes a lot of sense if you follow the Little Season timeline. They, and you know who I mean when I say they, changed English for two main reasons. First is that without understanding of this true English, which luckily we have in the KJV, we would have no idea to whom Jesus is speaking. David Daniels explains it best.
Classical English had a way to tell when you were talking to one person versus many people. Many people has a Y. one person has a T. Thee, thou, thy, thine. Now I realize that Nicodemus is a guy by himself talking to Jesus. And Jesus said in verse 5, Jesus answered, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I said unto thee, ye must be born again. Now, if you read it in the New King James or a lot of other translations, it'll say, marvel not, don't be surprised, marveled, whatever it is, that I said to you, you must be born again. Oh, so he's just talking to Nicodemus? The only thing you can see in the context is he's talking to Nicodemus. There's nothing that says he's talking to everybody. There's one thing. It's clear in the Greek. And in the classical English, you have it preserved. Marvel not that I say unto thee, ye must be born again.
In a nutshell, they removed the singular pronouns so that they could manipulate the words of Jesus with their Schofield dispensationalist deception. The second reason they modified our language to remove the singular pronouns is so that we, the people, identify ourselves with plural pronouns. People is the term we hear in the original Founding Father documents. We, the people. People have rights. So to make sure we don't have any of those rights, they had to legally change the definition of the words. People still have the rights guaranteed in the Constitution, but persons do not. And they set up a system where we are tricked into referring to ourselves as a person. They don't write laws, which exist under the jurisdiction of common law. They write code, which exists under the jurisdiction of maritime or commerce law. This is only relevant to corporations conducting commerce, but the reach is limitless. Nancy Pelosi has said that the Constitution is irrelevant today, and she's right, at least for most people, or persons, I should say. They can literally write and pass any bill they wish, even if it's unconstitutional, because they write legislation for persons, which are corporate entities, not people. Commerce law, which is what all law is today, does not apply to people. They very specifically use the term person or persons when writing contracts or drafting legislation, but not natural persons, which are the living, breathing humans. They are referring to what's called a legal fiction or corporate entity. You see, by law, a corporation cannot conduct business with a natural person because they can only engage in legal commerce with other corporations. So to entrap us in their scheme, they've set in place tricks that cause us to give up all rights because we think of things like names and simple grammatical changes as just a normal part of everyday modern life. We must never identify ourselves as a person or legal entity if we wish to have any rights. When addressing people or a natural person, the proper pronoun would be thou, since you is plural. But they changed it so that now you means both singular and plural, forcing us to refer to ourselves as an entity or corporation, also known as our all caps name, to trick us into participation in their commerce courts, where they have jurisdiction. The plural they refer to is the corporation. While there are a few courts in this country that still handle law, they're called Article 3 courts, commerce courts are Article 1, they are few and far between and only federal. There are no state courts that have the jurisdiction to handle cases against people or natural persons. So, a quick recap. 1. They needed to make singular and plural pronouns the same so that they can combine the legal fiction with the natural human. This is why we no longer have words like thou, thy, or thee, and instead use the pronoun you to incorrectly refer to singular as well as plural. 2. The Y words, ye and you, are plural. The T words, thou, thine, thy, and thee, are singular. 3. This accomplishes two things. 1. It causes people to misunderstand the KJV so that they can manipulate Jesus' words. And 2. Allows for a legal fiction, essentially tricking us into identifying ourselves as a corporation and thus submitting to their authority. It also helps confirm the little season theory because it's more than just singular versus plural. There's also subject versus object pronouns we've lost. Just look at ye and you. They're both plural, but ye is the subject and you is the object version of the pronoun in Old English. Now let's look at Matthew 16:28. Knowing that they had their choice of pronouns, all of which are used frequently and correctly throughout the KJV, it's quite easy to tell that Jesus is specifically speaking directly to his disciples in attendance, and not some future random people as dispensationalists claim. I believe the next revolution against the modern-day Weimar Republic that the entire world exists in today will start in Scotland or Ireland. They don't seem to be afraid to lose what they have in order to do what's right. And I'm not just referring to the recent political statements. They rejected the changing of the language 200 years ago because it's stupid and doesn't make any sense. The other Romantic languages still have the various pronoun forms to represent plural, singular, object, and subject. To this day, the Scots and Irish still use ye, and some even use the term use. It made its way over to the US and is used in New York and Pennsylvania even today. I thought it sounded stupid the first time I heard it, but it's actually a much more elegant way of defining who you're addressing during speech, a throwback to proper English. I mentioned earlier the phrase all caps name and wanted to briefly elaborate. This refers to the title on our birth certificates, driver's license, passport, all government and bank documents. This isn't us. This is a legal fiction, a corporation. We cannot ever identify ourselves by this fictitious legal entity that was created when our birth certificates were signed. There is so much more to this that we will cover later, but that is what we need to know for this video. We all know they like to invent words nowadays to push their agenda, but 100 years ago they would simply change them. Most importantly, after law or contracts were signed. It's amazing what evil can accomplish just by changing the definitions of words after the contracts are signed. Any loan with interest is usury. I could cite about 100 passages in the Bible on what God thinks of those who collect interest, but I assume you already know it, and it would almost require another video. From biblical times up until the near present, usury meant the collection of any interest at all. Not abusive interest as they claim the definition to be today. All dictionaries and writings on the topic from the 1800s and prior defined it properly, and even Webster still defines it as the lending of money with an interest charge for its use. And it's not just us. All Abrahamic religions forbid usury. In fact, even right now, most banks offer kosher or halasha-compliant loans for Jews and Muslims. It's just a modern manipulation because the bank still gets their cut through loopholes, but it just proves that the definition is real. Usury is the act of earning any interest on a loan. So for those of us who work in finance, our entire day is spent dealing in sin, and the entire banking industry is an abomination. I know many people who believe they know more than God say, well, they're just taking a few percent to justify their business. Well, they're not. With current interest rates, we end up paying more than $750,000 in interest alone on a $500,000 house with a standard 30-year mortgage. That $500,000 house ends up costing us over $1.25 million. I know we all think we know better at times, but the Father really does know what's best. Income is a word in which the definition has changed and been debated thousands of times in courtrooms around the country since the Civil War. Back in the 1800s, it was the legal way of saying profit. The closest definition today would be capital gains on investments. To the people of 1913 who were duped into supporting the Revenue Act, this is exactly what they were told. The politicians sold it as a tax on the rich, a way for the government to get their money from the profits of wealthy investors. Of course, that wasn't going to happen, so they immediately, with the passing of this bill, changed the definition of income to any federally derived source of money. Meaning, you had to pay income tax if you worked for the federal government, used federal land for cattle or oil drilling, or investments in federal corporations, either gains or dividends. Still, not wages or salaries from private industry. So initially this didn't affect many people, although those who qualified were really pinched during the First World War, where the taxable rate went as high as 77%. It wasn't until that Second War in the early 40s that people started voluntarily paying income tax to support the war effort. It was heavily advertised as being the most patriotic thing an American could do, and they renamed it the victory tax. The government started handing out 1040 forms to everyone so they could calculate what they should donate because it was unrelated to their income or careers. And by the end of the war, through further deception, it became routine. We stupidly fill out those 1040 forms, as do the owners of private corporations, our employers, making our jobs a federally connected activity. And therefore, they can legally appropriate that tax from us. Now keep in mind, this isn't a tax at all, which is another example of the definition of the word change. 100% of it goes to paying the debt owed to the private bank that prints our money. Not a dime goes towards public services. A commission ordered by Reagan when he first took office concluded that the IRS is a collection agency for the private bank that prints our money. This may be the greatest deception of them all, taught throughout all seminaries and churches around the world. Belief in Christ is erroneously taught as just acknowledging he exists, when the Bible makes it quite clear that belief means dedicating your life to his teachings and standards. We have millions of Christians in this country who seem to be under a very deliberately misguided impression that Jesus is the God of unconditional forgiveness. This is partially true, but what churches and of course seminaries teach is false doctrine. Most churches these days aren't in the business of promoting the teachings of Jesus Christ as much as they are just trying to make people feel good about themselves, which is great, but not at the expense of truth. Here in Philly, I regularly drive by churches with rainbow and Bohm flags hanging out front. What do you think Jesus would have said about his temples promoting racism, terrorism, body mutilation, and sodomy? It's the Weimar Republic in our churches now. They like to quote passages like John 3:16 and then deceive their victims into thinking that belief, as in acknowledging Jesus existed, is all you need for eternal life. In Ephesians 2:8 and 9, Paul confirms John 3:16 that we are saved by faith, but in the very next verse explains that this is accomplished through works. We can't just do whatever we want, fail to repent, and then expect to spend our afterlife with Jesus. James 2:19 reminds us that even the demons believe in Jesus, but that doesn't save them. In John 14:15, Jesus says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." The best recommendation I can give is to read the red letter KJV, which highlights all of Jesus' words. It's not that much to read. We just have to take the time to truly understand what he says, and most of it is black and white. Jesus makes it quite clear when he's telling a parable. The Amish live according to the standards of the Sermon on the Mount, and that's really all we need. Jesus was not the nice guy taught in church today. He was honest. He didn't tell people what they wanted to hear. He told people what they needed to hear. Just take a look around at the people who attend church today and what principles and values they hold dear. Wealth, vanity, debaucherous behavior, and love for all of Satan's institutions. I promise you, if these people met Jesus today, they would look down their noses at him. They don't know him because they've been taught false scripture. We could spend years going over just the specific type of deception, word manipulation, which is just standard operating procedure in the modern world. But if we even look at the contracts we sign, we see that we have no rights. And that's after we signed away our children's rights on the birth certificate and submitted to a false authority simply by identifying as a legal entity with no rights. For example, just look at the deed on your house. You are most likely listed as tenant, which combined with registering with the county is why you pay property tax and don't actually own the property. It's just basic common sense. You don't have to pay for something you own. Keep in mind, it is easier than you think to unregister. These topics go far deeper, of course, but the important takeaway is that words matter more than we know. They destroy lives and minds, corrupt the teachings of Jesus Christ, and encourage us to live debaucherous lifestyles during this little season. We need to follow Jesus' advice and be as wise as a serpent. But most of us just ignore it, even though the Bible is quite clear on what happens to us if we fail to acknowledge and call out deception. And the reason is simple. If we choose to ignore the evil in this world, it grows in strength, and we're then responsible when it affects other people. I know we've all heard the famous Edmund Burke quote, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." And I've already dedicated a major portion of a previous video to the biblical references that support this line of thinking, so I won't do it again here. But it's true, we must be stronger than the past or future generations to be close to Christ and educate and speak out on these polarizing topics. God bless. Correct, at least given the available evidence at this point in time. But for some reason, we aren't discussing the most important aspect, which is what that means for those of us living under the rule of Satan today. I get it, if we discuss how nearly every aspect of modern life is filled with satanic influence, we also offend everyone's sensibility and probably lose most of our subscribers. People want to have their cake and eat it too, even us little seasoned theorists. We want to acknowledge all the wickedness around us, yet still participate in our corrupted government, banking, and school systems. Not to mention the vain and hedonistic lifestyles brought about by modern leisure, entertainment, and social norms. But the truth of the matter is that if we're willing to admit evil runs the world, we also have to throw aside our pride, recognize that so much of modern life is awash with sin, and adjust our lifestyles to align with true Christian values, no matter how painful. This could lose us our friends, family, and financial stability, at least temporarily. But would you not agree that Christ is worth it? Most would argue that we are currently living in the best time to be alive. You know the lie that they've been trying to manipulate us with since birth? Things just get better every day. They equate worthless technology with the lie of evolution to try and convince us it's the best time to be alive. Well, it's definitely one of the worst times to be alive spiritually, and as we discover more and more every day, we aren't even as evolved technologically as our ancestors thousands of years ago. Our political leaders tell us everything is wonderful and amazing today, but early church fathers prayed for us because they knew this would be the absolute worst time to be alive. Augustine of Hippo wrote in The City of God, Book 20, that the little season would be the worst time to be alive. He knew he was living near the beginning of the millennial reign and claimed that when Satan is loosed, it will be extraordinarily difficult to escape the deception, and most will fail. And it's true, just look around. Nearly every single thing that every single person believes is a lie. Some say the worst part of life today is perpetual wars, violent crime, and a society of ungodly moral values. But they are just symptoms of the deception. Satan created a world in which the temptation to sin is extraordinary. He also says the persecutions will be amongst the most severe in history, with the faithful being tested to the utmost. And he's right when the one world army that is like the sands of the seas is being assembled to fight Jesus. What do you think will happen to those of us who refuse to fight? Or worse, fight against them? Keep in mind that he was well aware of the brutal deaths of the disciples and followers like Polycarp and Irenaeus. And unlike previous persecutions, which were local, he said this would be worldwide. He translated Gog and Magog as representing all nations, the entire world. And that is true. We essentially have a one-world government today with the Prince of Darkness at the helm. If we are indeed nearing the end of the little season, then we have nothing but unimaginable pain to look forward to before final judgment. The good news is we know who wins the battle and who will be exposed in the final unmasking of evil. Tychonius, who influenced Augustine, also knew he was living in the millennial reign, and similarly feared for those living after Satan was unbound. And what he says stacks up with what we see today. He claimed that hypocrites would run the governments and the church would be overrun with evil and deception and eventually fall away, which is fully evident right now. We don't have many more writings from Tychonius. They've been lost or destroyed, but his followers reference his work regularly. I'd love to get my hands on a copy of his Commentary on the Apocalypse, but I'm sure the only copies of those are locked in a vault under the Vatican, and I just don't feel like navigating my way through a flurry of gay, pedophilic cocaine orgies to find them. And for those of us who want specific dates, Tychonius was adamant that both the millennial reign and little season are not a set number of years, just periods of time that begin and end whenever the events of Revelation come to pass. The deception that the early church fathers spoke of about the little season has led to the most devastating aspect: inadvertent sin. Satan sees the world as his soul harvesting factory, and it is because of deception. He has convinced the entire world through the use of 5 major institutions that sin is innocent, and when incorporated into everyday life as it is today, seems even more innocent. This causes a problem because participation is approval. In John 17:14-18, Jesus says we need to be in this world, but not of it. That means just because everyone else around us is participating in adultery, that we shouldn't do it. Not so difficult for your typical good Christian, but it also means we can't expand the money supply and sacrifice our children's inheritance to spend $90,000 on a new truck or SUV just to keep up with the Joneses, when a barely used Honda sedan will get us there where we need to go just as well, and probably more reliably, at 1/10 the price. So let's break down each category chronologically. Satan deceives and then rewards his most obedient victims. This basic concept, through the use of 5 modern-day institutions, is how he controls the world. When a child is born, his or her first experiences in the world are through their parents, who are already completely and thoroughly brainwashed. After that, we have the first category, medicine. To be honest, it's not really an industry that needs to exist anywhere near the level it does today. And for the most part, it's self-sustaining. In fact, healthcare is now the largest employer in almost every state. It's also not a coincidence that the increase has coincided with the increase in poison-filled long metal spikes injected into children. Shortly after birth, children are physically poisoned, causing numerous autoimmune disorders, cancers, mental disorders, allergies, you name it. This keeps us not only reliant on the system, but more importantly, functioning well below peak performance, which also makes us easier to control. Media and entertainment. Every mainstream book, TV show, movie, or social media company is designed to spread misinformation. Just like with every other category, all we have to do is look at the names of the people running these institutions. It's not a coincidence. People truly believe that entertainment and mainstream news sources are completely innocent, but they normalize all the lies most people think of as normal today. Believe it or not, casual sex, vanity, dollar worship, and self-centered ideologies are not innocent behaviors. But good luck trying to convince 99% of the population of that, mostly because they see it all day, every day, while interacting with media. Just look at space travel. We never thought twice about it as kids or young adults. But it's such an obvious fabrication if you put any effort into investigating it, that they just start planting these seeds in our brains from a very young age, so we never do. And it literally applies to anything else, from the age of our world, to history, to Christ, to medicine, to government, you name it. Education. So then they send us to school. It's almost entirely misinformation or mental masturbation. I've cited this in much more detail in a previous video, but the same wicked individuals who enslaved us financially put us in a mental prison as well. Rockefeller, who turned a properly evolving medical industry into a pharmaceutical-based nightmare, one that actually made people sicker but rendered immense profits, also overturned our education system. The architect said Rockefeller told him to keep students busy and stupid. And he did. And we are. Believe it or not, children are not meant to be kept in seats all day while being taught lies, and then forced to become addicted to hardcore pharmaceuticals if they don't. Look at elementary education in some of the Nordic countries. Children are allowed to run around and play in the woods all day with a few breaks to return to the teacher for lessons. And guess what? They absolutely blow us away in academic excellence. To make matters worse, this is where the real indoctrination starts, because we are then rewarded for our obedience to the false narrative they teach. Think about it. In all your academic life, whether in grade school or college, were we ever rewarded for using our brains? For establishing critical thought and questioning things that are clearly false? No. Quite the opposite happened, didn't it? So from grade school through high school, we are rewarded for zipping our lips and pledging allegiance to lies. But that's when the real scam starts. College. It doesn't even have to be expensive. Let's be honest, if we had actual institutions that cared, they would provide a government-funded testing center, and students would only have to purchase some textbooks and take tests when they're ready, making a year of college cost less than $1,000, and students could live anywhere. For previous generations, it wasn't all bad. They could learn a few things, but more importantly, get some acknowledgement for it and start a career. And there were affordable schools so you didn't have to start your adult life strapped with debt. That all changed with the start of the Department of Education, which was a scheme perpetrated by colleges, banks, and politicians to make a fortune off of this career necessity. The cost of school relative to income skyrocketed when they joined up and started price-fixing tuition, because it forced 18-year-old kids to get loans worth hundreds of thousands of dollars that legally couldn't be forgiven in bankruptcy court. I kid you not, an ambitious 18-year-old can't get a $10,000 business loan, but a $400,000 school loan? No problem. Now that's absolutely egregious in and of itself. But here's the real kicker. All we're learning is information that is completely free on the internet. And to add to the pain, it's not even a legitimate education. It's indoctrination. We're only learning half of what someone else who was self-taught would learn, because we're only taught one side of every story or school of thought. We're only taught the narrative, the lies. And we're still left with the problem of success only going to the non-thinking obedience. That's not to say all college graduates are idiots. I'd like to think of myself as a notch or two above moron. But we didn't get those degrees through intelligence and meaningful thought experiments. We got them by shutting our mouths and regurgitating false narrative. It's no coincidence that so many successful people are college dropouts. Government and law. I don't think I need to tell you why the government and law is completely corrupt, from the lowest municipal courts and legislators to the highest levels of the executive branch. So to keep with the chronological theme, we will just discuss jobs in general, since our theoretical modern person has now graduated high school or college and is ready for full-time employment. Their obedience to deception will now render many financial rewards, furthering not only their own deception, but tricking others into believing that living sinful lifestyles is a noble goal. This is accomplished both in the private and government sectors. People who are physically capable of working a real job are literally stealing from taxpayers by working a government job. Legalized theft is still theft.
Pretty
I've
good.
spoken with a few people on this
Seriously, Aaron's
topic and received
E30.
quite a bit of backlash.
BMW.
But I have to say that
What
while
is
they
this?
may
Seriously, in
not
the
worship
back.
Satan
The button
outright,
is so cool.
dedicating their
That's a BMW?
Yeah.
real close sense
What year? 80 something, right?
possible to repent
Yeah, I don't know.
daily.
85?
It's a German car or something.
Yeah, it's like it's an older version.
Yeah, it's
It's
got a
very
ski
square
thing.
looking,
It's got
right?
a, what do you call it? A ski pole holder.
They're expensive to work on though.
Yeah.
They work real jobs.
That's a BMW. That must be in the
Yeah.
80s. Ask him what year it is when you talk to
He
him.
said it was a BMW E30 or something.
Oh, that's the E30 he was talking about? Oh, okay. I didn't know what an E30 was. I meant to look it up. Oh, I did look it up. That's right. I did look it up. I didn't know. I don't remember it coming back as BMW. So that he did say 80 something when he told you on the phone that day. Yeah, they're nice. Should have had him park over here and behind Olivia's
No,
car.
he said that he said that
You didn't want to get
it's only, I
stuck?
think it's only he didn't want to get stuck because it's
It's a rear wheel drive?
It's a short car. Also, something rear. It's only rear
Rear wheel drive.
Yeah. So he said it might get stuck.
It
And he
might.
didn't want to like scrape the bottom or something.
Yeah, but he went up in the snowbank. He probably scraped the bottom more. Going up on the, you know.
Yeah, that's pretty good. He went up on it.
Yeah, or he could have just parked right at the edge of the driveway too. Could have, you know, tell him park in this driveway if he ever comes over like down a snow day. Alright. Everything went good?
What?
Everything went good?
Yeah, pretty good. I think I got out.
You hurt your wrist again?
I shot myself.
This
Oh.
is the final institution of deception used to control the population.
That's possible.
Well, we were on the black diamond. It was not bad. The other one, the square of the blue one, it's supposedly easier, but it was just so icy that it was impossible, especially on snowboard.
I thought they called him a diamond, right? Black
No,
diamond?
there's blue square, and then that's like a medium, like intermediate. Then black diamond is like hard. Double black diamond is like the hardest. And then there's like a green triangle, I think. It's like the easiest.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go tomorrow because Desmond is trying to learn. I think I got it down the 180.
Well, you guys been boarding, right?
Yeah, I'm bored. Aaron and Lucas ski. They've been going. Me and Ricky just been doing board, and we go on this small. And then I joined them. I went up the black diamond with them a couple times, but it's just not. They're too like fast. It's just not fun. I went by myself to Ralph's Run because there's more side hits over there.
Yeah.
And so I just went. I just like went on the side trails. I met some of these two guys. They're pretty nice. They were like first time. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, I mean, might as well take your time paying all that money.
I know that's what Ricky was saying. He said you took 10 minutes to go down that small hill. It wasn't that small. It was pretty high. But Aaron and Lucas, I have to go so fast to keep up with them, and it's like. It's not fun.
You know, to do once in a while, to do maybe one
It
or
was fun twice. It was fun.
to do one or two runs just to do all speed or something like that.
But like they did, that's like all they did. Is like just go down, just down.
Yeah.
I like to take my time, learn some of the tricks. I fell a lot on like when it gets to like, so there's like this part where it's like hill, and I like it when it's like slightly inclined. But it's not too much. This way I can like practice the spins and stuff. Because I'm trying to practice my front and side is so much harder. But I've just been watching like the other guys when they go down.
Yeah.
It's really helpful to just like watch them when they're. It's like even like when I'm on the ski lift, I'm just like watching people down there and like watch what they do. A lot of them, they push forward, then back, and then they pull their legs up. So and it's really helpful when to do that because you get a lot more boost. I think it's because you're pushing your weight to the front, then the back.
Yeah.
Then you push your leg up. Don't jump, but like pull this leg, extend this leg. Then there was this one guy. He was crazy. When he did it, he goes like this, and then touches his board, and then back down like this, and going just like. It was awesome.
Yeah, tricking.
Those guys are good. And like I was watching some of the guys that do like the butter drills or whatever, and like where they go like this, and then and they just like they keep spinning. It's like it's all about like when I watch them, it's all about them moving. They're like it's two separate parts: your legs and then your torso. And you want to move your torso and then just keep pushing.
Right.
Because like what I do is I turn 90, then I stop because I'm scared that I'm not gonna make it. But then that's when you fall because you're not confident.
Right.
So you have to follow through, bring your leg around, and then shift your weight back. And I was also using, some people do like the guide arm, which is really helpful for like shifting your weight.
Yeah.
So this way you don't fall over. So it's pretty cool.
That's cool. Yeah, because you don't really have you can't take your leg out of your boot and hit the front of the board. Is there a one boot board? Yeah, there is.
No, I saw some people.
There is a
like,
one
some
boot
videos,
board.
People do one where they keep one foot out.
Yeah.
And they go like this, right? They stick one foot out and they're like this, and I'm like, oh my god, why would you?
Because you got more control if you keep one boot out.
Yeah, but it's a lot. No, well you do. There's like different things you get more control over, but you also get less control because now all the board is in one foot now. So you're just swinging around with one foot.
Yeah, but you get used to using the other one outside the strap. Is all you're really doing.
I don't know. It's a lot when I do that because when you get on the you can't have both strapped on when you're getting off the lift. You have to have one off. That's why you have to. That's because it's a lot more slippery. I noticed because when you're trying to like lean back, your other foot slides back.
Yeah.
Like your other foot will slide back. I have to like really concentrate and like hold my foot there. But I mean, that could be part of it.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say this is snowing. I was gonna go like Frogs Hill or something. I don't know if there's a hill that's like a
steep hill?
No, but like
you don't want nothing too flat.
Like one that's flat but not too flat. Cause I don't want to be like just straight down and then I have to walk all the way up. Like I kind of want some like.
Yeah, I think. I told you get some wax. If you wax your board and you hit Grenville, matter of fact, if you wax your board, if you wax your board and make yourself a ramp out here, you can get all the way into Nancy's yard. She's not home.
I was gonna go to the store, but then I think I forgot what happened. I was walking through the store, but then I think mom wanted me to do something.
You got to get board wax, you know.
They have like the I don't know where we're gonna be in the store though, because I walked through the store and I was looking around, and I saw there's the boards on the top, but I don't know if the board wax would be up there if it's in like the middle.
Yeah.
I was just asking to play.
Yeah, that's what you got to do because then you can really go a lot more places. Really, then you can go if you set yourself a takeoff point. Go down onto the snow, you'll go down because you got enough of a slope when you hit. Yeah, you can go right through the bushes. Matter of fact, you can jump over the bushes, make that part of the jump. You know, yeah.
It filters that side area too.
Or you could whip out down the driveway around the van or something.
You know how there's like the little right? It goes down, right? And then on the side there's that stuff. If I get like a shovel and like make a pile there, then I can go sideways off. And then down, and then put another pile. Things it melts, especially when it rained. I was gonna go, but then it rained. It was so sad.
Yeah, I mean that. I'm even thinking Grenvilles are gonna take you all the way through.
Yeah,
if you're waxed up, yeah.
I gotta get that wax.
You know, 1 or 2 runs.
Troy said it was hard to wax it, but I don't know. I told him about
it. It is.
He said get someone to do it, but I said I'll figure it out.
Well, we should look it up because we got buffing machines. So if they tell you recommend that you put it on in layers with a buffing machine, you got one. Yeah, and it might be, it might be that.
1 Timothy 5:8 tells us to provide for our families.
Oh, by the way, Ricky's sleeping over.
Okay.
Philippians 2:14-15 says to do all things without grumbling. You may be blameless and innocent, children of God, among whom you shine as lights in the world. Ephesians 5:3-11 tells us to guard
back to business here. Let's see, we missed a lot.
Colossians 3:12-13 tell us to cultivate purity, humility, and forgiveness. And while we will never reach the standard of living, Matthew 5:16, there's allergies, you name it. This keeps us
I think we're about here somewhere.
Importantly, functioning well below peak performance, which also makes us easier to control. Media and entertainment. Every mainstream book, TV show, movie, or social media company is designed to spread misinformation. Just like with every other category, all we have to do is look at the names of the people running these institutions. It's not a coincidence. People truly believe that entertainment and mainstream news sources are completely innocent, but they normalize all the lies most people think of as normal today. Believe it or not, casual sex, vanity, dollar worship, and self-centered ideologies are not innocent behaviors. But good luck trying to convince 99% of the population of that, mostly because they see it all day, every day, while interacting with media. Just look at space travel. We never thought twice about it as kids or young adults. But it's such an obvious fabrication if you put any effort into investigating it, that they just start planting these seeds in our brains from a very young age so we never do. And it literally applies to anything else, from the age of our world, to history, to Christ, to medicine, to government, you name it. Education. So then they send us to school. It's almost entirely misinformation or mental masturbation. I've cited this in much more detail in a previous video, but the same wicked individuals who enslaved us financially put us in a mental prison as well. Rockefeller, who turned a properly evolving medical industry into a pharmaceutical-based nightmare, one that actually made people sicker but rendered immense profits, also overturned our education system. The architect said Rockefeller told him to keep students busy and stupid. And he did, and we are. Believe it or not, children are not meant to be kept in seats all day while being taught lies, and then forced to become addicted to hardcore pharmaceuticals if they don't. Look at elementary education in some of the Nordic countries. Children are allowed to run around and play in the woods all day with a few breaks to return to the teacher for lessons. And guess what? They absolutely blow us away in academic excellence. To make matters worse, this is where the real indoctrination starts, because we are then rewarded for our obedience to the false narrative they teach. Think about it. In all your academic life, whether in grade school or college, were we ever rewarded for using our brains? For establishing critical thought and questioning things that are clearly false? No. Quite the opposite happened, didn't it? So from grade school through high school, we are rewarded for zipping our lips and pledging allegiance to lies. But that's when the real scam starts. College. It doesn't even have to be expensive. Let's be honest, if we had actual institutions that cared, they would provide a government-funded testing center, and students would only have to purchase some textbooks and take tests when they're ready, making a year of college cost less than $1,000, and students could live anywhere. For previous generations, it wasn't all bad. They could learn a few things, but more importantly, get some acknowledgement for it and start a career. And there were affordable schools so you didn't have to start your adult life strapped with debt. That all changed with the start of the Department of Education, which was a scheme perpetrated by colleges, banks, and politicians to make a fortune off of this career necessity. The cost of school relative to income skyrocketed when they joined up and started price-fixing tuition, because it forced 18-year-old kids to get loans worth hundreds of thousands of dollars that legally couldn't be forgiven in bankruptcy court. I kid you not, an ambitious 18-year-old can't get a $10,000 business loan, but a $400,000 school loan? No problem. Now that's absolutely egregious in and of itself. But here's the real kicker. All we're learning is information that is completely free on the internet. And to add to the pain, it's not even a legitimate education. It's indoctrination. We're only learning half of what someone else who was self-taught would learn, because we're only taught one side of every story or school of thought. We're only taught the narrative, the lies. And we're still left with the problem of success only going to the non-thinking obedience. That's not to say all college graduates are idiots. I'd like to think of myself as a notch or two above moron, but we didn't get those degrees through intelligence and meaningful thought experiments. We got them by shutting our mouths and regurgitating false narrative. It's no coincidence that so many successful people are college dropouts. Government and law. I don't think I need to tell you why the government and law is completely corrupt from the lowest municipal courts and legislators to the highest levels of the executive branch. So to keep with the chronological theme, we will just discuss jobs in general, since our theoretical modern person has now graduated high school or college and is ready for full-time employment. Their obedience to deception will now render many financial rewards, furthering not only their own deception, but tricking others into believing that living sinful lifestyles is a noble goal. This is accomplished both in the private and government sectors. People who are physically capable of working a real job are literally stealing from taxpayers by working a government job. Legalized theft is still theft. I've spoken with a few people on this topic and received quite a bit of backlash. But I have to say that while they may not worship Satan outright, dedicating their careers to his service is a real close second. I guess it's possible to repent daily, but it's also just as easy to pivot into a career where they're actually providing a good or service to humanity. For the most part, people who avoid college and opt for manufacturing, farming, or the trades are able to avoid this trap. They work real jobs. They provide goods and services to the population. Not to say that college grads don't work in these fields, they most certainly do. But I'm focusing on liberal arts degrees here. For those people, their jobs are fake, literally. The people who print the money also have the ability to print fake jobs to keep the narrative alive. Everyone knows that government jobs are just a form of welfare. There's nothing they do that a computer couldn't 40 years ago, but the college scam falls apart if the graduates aren't given jobs. Whether they work hard or not, they don't do anything. And it has expanded exponentially in the last 20 years. Why do we suddenly need millions of federally funded administration jobs in every industry? Well, we don't. Not only have they quadrupled fake high-paying government jobs, they've increased fake jobs in the corporate world as well. I show you all the receipts in my second video, but a quick recap is that 90% of corporate jobs do not need to exist. They are entirely fake and only exist because the people who print the money want the companies they choose to be successful to have a large population of employees to help push their narrative that allegiance to their slavery system and hatred for all of Christ's teachings is the correct path. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that the people who print the money also write the scripts. Banking and finance. This is the final institution of deception used to control the population. These soldiers of Satan have to be rewarded. The scam has to be funded, right? I covered this topic to exhaustion in my second video, so I'll just say this. Avoid any job where your paycheck is made possible through the collection of interest. So we can see the world is set up in such a way that we experience a lifetime of deception through many means, all with the ultimate goal of enslaving us in this realm in an attempt to steal our souls for the next. So how do we navigate this little season? First and foremost, read the red letter KJV. In fact, the entire New Testament is a fantastic little season primer, a field manual, living in Satan's world waiting for Christ's return. A lot of similarities, even if in many ways it was easier for them, because good and evil was more black and white, and they also weren't slaves like we are today. They only paid 3 to 5% tax to the Romans, while by the time the scam has run its course, we pay closer to 70% of our wages in tax. But it does provide amazing lessons to navigate our own lives if we understand every single word Jesus says without trying to manipulate it in an attempt to make it relevant to the modern world, as so many men of the cloth do today. Jesus didn't tell us to adapt his teachings. He told us we would lose family and friends to the synagogue of Satan. Use his words to guide you to understanding the evil around us in the most wicked time to be alive since Enoch. A good rule of thumb for anyone is, what would Jesus do? Read his words, get to know him. From your morning routine till sleep, honor him by following his example and repent when you don't. Should I put on a suit, the modern day equivalent of Pharisee robes, or should I wear something that doesn't advertise vanity or pride? Should I flirt with my work wife or actually honor my marriage? Should I zone out and watch stupid videos on my lunch break, or take that time to get to know my colleagues and offer them support if necessary? Should I spend that bonus money on a personal pleasure or find a need in my family or community that needs it more? First, we need to keep our identity anchored in Christ, not in any earthly nation, system, or ideology. Philippians 3:20 says our citizenship is in heaven. Luke 9:23 says to begin every day by reaffirming your allegiance to Christ. Matthew 6:24 says to refuse to define yourself by money, career, or politics. Titus 2:13 says to keep your hope fixed on his return, not on human reform. This one obviously isn't written for us, but it says a lot. So many of us look to politicians to help us escape evil when each and every one of them takes us further down the path of wickedness. The only salvation is with Christ. Next, we need to understand that Satan's chief weapon is deception. Most people will accept that. What they won't accept and need to is that this deception has reached its tentacles into every nook and cranny of modern life. John 5:19 says the whole world lies under the power of the evil one. Acts 17:11 says we need to measure every message, law, and institution against Scripture. Matthew 24:24 says to expect propaganda, half-truths, and spiritual counterfeits. Hebrews 5:14 says to train your conscience through constant use of Scripture. All of these passages essentially tell us the same thing. Stop putting faith in government and politics and put it in Christ. The term Christian conservative is just as deceptive and ridiculous as Judeo-Christian. Along those same lines, we need to recognize when obedience to worldly authority would mean disobedience to God. Acts 5:29 says we must obey God rather than men. Romans 12:2 says we must not be conformed to this world. 2 Timothy 3:12 asks us to expect persecution as normal, not exceptional. This means if we feel comfortable in this wicked world, then we need to take a look at our faith. And 1 Peter 4:12-14 says, when in doubt, choose the path that preserves holiness, not comfort. So we need to be able to not only recognize sin and wickedness, but modify our behavior accordingly. More so, if we think everything is fine and all these wonderful institutions are here for the benefit of humanity, then we need to throw away everything we know and start fresh. Like Jesus said, we need to become like a child before we can become wise. We have to spiritually detach from the world's corrupt systems and values. Revelation 18:4 says to come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins. 2 Corinthians 6:14-18 says to avoid any partnerships that require moral compromise. Revelation 13:16 and 17 says to limit dependence on systems that promote wickedness or deception. And Deuteronomy 6:6-9 asks us to teach our households to discern and resist worldliness. Even if they're tired of hearing about it, even if they tell us we're depressing to listen to, let your spouse and children know of the evils of this world. Sometimes you just can't avoid all the satanic systems in place, and that's when we are required to stand tall and resist, realizing that time is short. Matthew 6:6 and 6:17-18 ask us to develop habits of prayer and fasting. 1 Peter 1:6 and 7 tells to accept suffering as a form of refining. Hebrews 3:13 asks us to encourage one another daily. And 2 Corinthians 4:17 and 18 teaches us to keep perspective, for this is training for eternal glory. It can be very difficult to stand alone, so we need to find community and fellow Christians. Acts 4:32-35 says we need to form small, trustworthy circles for worship, study, and mutual aid. 1 Peter 5:2 and 3 asks us to appoint spiritually mature leaders who shepherd rather than control. And Romans 16:5 tells us to meet in homes or discreetly if public worship is forbidden. This is particularly relevant to Christ followers in the little season, as churches are more and more becoming synagogues of Satan, leaving us with little other options. We must focus on prayer, not only for deliverance, but also for mercy on a deceived world. Jeremiah 29:7 tells us to seek the welfare of the city and pray to the Lord on its behalf. Matthew 5:44 asks us to pray for those who persecute you. 1 Timothy 2:1 and 2 asks us to intercede for leaders, even the wicked ones. And Ephesians 6:18-20 demands we pray for discernment, strength, and opportunities to witness. This doesn't mean we need to completely drop out of the world. We must still make a home for our families, but do so honestly. We are asked to sustain ourselves without relying on corrupt systems, which would be through the 5 institutions mentioned earlier in the video. The Bible tells us to provide goods and services that will serve our communities well and strengthen the faithful. The Amish have mastered this sentiment. Thessalonians 4:11 and 12 tells us to aspire to live quietly, to mind your own affairs, and to work with your hands. We know exactly who they're talking about here. Colossians 3:23 and 24 tell us to be diligent, honest, and fair in all labor. Again, we know who they're talking about here. And 1 Timothy 5:8 tells us to provide for our families. And finally, we need to resist moral decay by living distinctly. Philippians 2:14 and 15 says to do all things without grumbling, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God, among whom you shine as lights in the world. Ephesians 5:3-11 tells us to guard speech, media, and habits. Matthew 5:8 and Colossians 3:12 and 13 tell us to cultivate purity, humility, and forgiveness. And while we will never reach this standard of living, Matthew 5:16 asks us to model our life so that others see Christ in us. To be honest, it doesn't even really matter if it is the little season. We have identified without question the presence of Satan in every institution that makes up the pillars of modern life. And we need to reject it accordingly. People love to ignore the reality that smacks them right in the face every day just to enjoy the comforts of the modern world. But the problem is that if you love the deception, you love Satan. The modern world and lifestyle represents him perfectly because it's his invention, his greatest work, really. If you love interacting with media that features debaucherous lifestyles, then so shall you be rewarded with eternity in hell, where you'll be surrounded with like-minded individuals. For those of us who wish to spend eternity with Christ, have hope. We know how the story ends. Just remember that times will be very difficult as we near that end, and I just hope our community has reached as many souls as possible before that time. God bless everyone.
Certain women seem to navigate life with an almost mystical grace, as if they're guided by invisible forces. Why do some women effortlessly attract abundance, love, and spiritual awakening, while others struggle to find their path? The renowned hypnotic regression therapist Dolores Cannon spent decades exploring the deeper mysteries of human consciousness and soul purpose. Through her extensive work with thousands of clients, she discovered something profound. There are specific types of women that the universe consistently chooses for extraordinary missions on Earth. Today, we're diving deep into the 5 distinct archetypes of women that God, the universe, or source energy specifically selects for divine purposes. These aren't random choices. They're carefully orchestrated selections based on soul qualities, past life experiences, and the specific energy each woman carries. As we explore each type, you might recognize yourself or someone you know. You might even discover why you've always felt different, why you've experienced certain challenges, or why you seem to attract particular situations into your life. But here's what makes this exploration even more fascinating. Understanding your divine archetype isn't just about satisfying curiosity. It's about stepping fully into your power, embracing your spiritual mission, and finally understanding why you're here on Earth at this pivotal moment in humanity's evolution. If you're ready to discover which of these 5 divine feminine archetypes you embody, and how this knowledge can transform your entire life experience, then stick with us until the very end. And if this resonates with your soul's journey, please subscribe and activate notifications. Leave a comment saying, "I'm ready to embrace my divine feminine power." Throughout history, there have always been women who seem to operate on a different frequency than the rest of humanity. These women weren't necessarily born into privilege or given special advantages. Instead, they carried within them an innate knowing, a connection to something greater, that set them apart from the moment they took their first breath. Dolores Cannon's groundbreaking research through quantum healing hypnosis technique revealed that these special women aren't accidents of nature. They're souls who volunteered to incarnate on Earth during specific times to fulfill crucial spiritual missions. Each carries a unique vibrational signature, a divine blueprint that determines not only their life experiences, but also their role in humanity's collective awakening. The concept of chosen women isn't new. Ancient civilizations understood and honored these divine feminine archetypes. From the Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece to the wise women healers of indigenous cultures, societies recognized that certain females carried direct communication channels with the divine realm. However, as patriarchal systems gained dominance, much of this sacred knowledge was suppressed, hidden, or forgotten entirely. But now, during this great awakening period that Dolores Cannon often spoke about, these divine feminine energies are being called forth once again. The Earth needs these women to step into their power, to remember who they are, and to fulfill the missions they agreed to before incarnating. The universe is literally calling them home to themselves. What makes these women so special isn't their perfection or their lack of struggles. In fact, many of these chosen women face significant challenges throughout their lives. These difficulties aren't punishments or signs of unworthiness. They're purposeful experiences, designed to forge their souls, develop their spiritual strength, and prepare them for the greater work they came here to accomplish. The first major challenge these divine women face is often a profound sense of not belonging. From childhood, they may feel like they're living in the wrong time period, the wrong family, or even the wrong world entirely. This feeling of displacement isn't a character flaw, It's actually a soul memory of their true spiritual home and higher dimensional origins. Many of these women also experience what Dolores Cannon termed the dark night of the soul, periods of intense spiritual crisis where everything they thought they knew about life, purpose, and reality comes crashing down. These aren't random breakdowns. They're necessary breakdowns that precede breakthrough moments of spiritual awakening and divine remembering. Another significant challenge is the tendency to be misunderstood by family members, friends, and society at large. Their intuitive abilities, their different way of processing information, and their natural connection to spiritual realms often make them targets for ridicule, dismissal, or even persecution. This isolation can be particularly painful during the early years of their awakening journey. Share in the comments a time when you felt completely misunderstood because of your spiritual gifts or intuitive insights. The transformational journey of these chosen women typically follows a similar pattern, regardless of which specific archetype they embody. It begins with what Cannon called the awakening shock, a sudden recognition that there's far more to reality than what meets the eye. This might come through a psychic experience, a near-death encounter, a profound meditation, or even a traumatic event that cracks open their consciousness. Following this initial awakening, these women enter a period of intense seeking. They devour spiritual books, attend workshops, seek out teachers, and explore various healing modalities. This isn't casual curiosity. It's a soul-driven compulsion to understand their true nature and purpose. During this phase, they often experience rapid spiritual gifts development, including increased intuitive abilities, healing capabilities, or communication with spirit guides. The next phase involves what many spiritual teachers call the integration period. This is when these women must learn to balance their expanding spiritual awareness with practical earthly responsibilities. They must figure out how to live in the world while no longer being fully of it. This can be one of the most challenging phases because it requires developing entirely new life skills and often involves significant lifestyle changes. The final transformation phase is what Cannon referred to as mission activation. This is when these women finally step fully into their divine purpose, whether that's as healers, teachers, way showers, or earth frequency holders. They stop hiding their gifts and start using them in service to others and the planet's evolution. But perhaps the most profound transformation these women experience is the shift from feeling like victims of their sensitivity and differences to recognizing these qualities as their greatest strengths. They realize that their emotional depth, their psychic abilities, and their spiritual sensitivity aren't burdens to bear, but rather divine gifts to be cherished and shared. The connection between these chosen women and everyday life experiences runs much deeper than most people realize. These aren't women who live in spiritual bubbles disconnected from practical reality. Instead, their divine missions are often woven directly into their most mundane daily activities and relationships. For many of these women, their spiritual work begins right in their own families. They're often the ones who break generational patterns of trauma, dysfunction, or limited thinking. Through their healing journey, they don't just transform themselves, they literally change the energetic inheritance they pass down to future generations and even heal backwards through their family lineage. In their careers, these women often find themselves drawn to helping professions, even if they start in completely different fields. Many discover that regardless of their official job title, they naturally become the person others turn to for emotional support, spiritual guidance, or healing energy. They're the co-workers who somehow always know exactly what to say during difficult times, the friends who give advice that seems to come from a place of ancient wisdom. Their relationships, both romantic and platonic, often serve as crucibles for spiritual growth. These women tend to attract partners and friends who trigger their healing work, challenge their growth, or provide opportunities for them to practice unconditional love. What might look like relationship drama to the outside observer is actually sophisticated spiritual curriculum designed to help these women embody higher frequencies of love and compassion. Even their struggles with money, health, or life direction often serve their spiritual mission. Many of these chosen women go through periods of financial challenge not because they're meant to suffer, but because they need to develop an unshakable trust in divine provision and learn to value their gifts appropriately. If this resonates with your life experience, give this video a thumbs up to help more souls find this message of awakening. The evidence for these divine feminine archetypes can be found throughout history, in countless personal testimonies, and in the measurable effects these women have on their communities and the world at large. Historical records show us example after example of women who seem to operate with divine guidance, from Joan of Arc to Hildegard of Bingen, to more recent figures like Mother Teresa or Maya Angelou. In Dolores Cannon's regression work, she documented thousands of sessions where women accessed past life memories of serving in temple roles as priestesses, healers, and spiritual leaders in various ancient civilizations. Many of these souls chose to incarnate repeatedly throughout history, each time taking on roles that supported humanity's spiritual evolution. Modern research in quantum physics is beginning to validate what these women have always known intuitively,